Hello, and thanks for joining this webinar about internal audits. So let's just wait a minute for everyone to join. And while we are waiting, just let me know where are you joining from. So I'm calling in from Zagreb, from Croatia. And how about you? If you can just let me know through this question pane or through a chat message. So just that I get a feeling on which countries, from which countries the attendees are coming from. Okay, while we are waiting, just a couple of notes. So first, we are recording this webinar, and you'll be able actually to watch it basically at the same place where you registered for this webinar. So if you're watching this through LinkedIn or through YouTube, basically on the same page where you joined the webinar, you will also see the recording. So the very same page. If you joined through Zoom, then basically you will see the recording on the same page where you registered for the webinar on Advisera's website. So just go for the same page, same URL, and you will see the recording there. Okay, I see some people letting me know where they're from. So from UK, Oxfordshire, great. Okay, Italy, great. Okay, thanks for letting me know where you're coming from. So far, Europe. Let's hope that there are some other continents as well. All right, so yeah, let me just start with the webinar. So welcome to this webinar, how to perform internal audits for ISO 27001, NIS2 and DORA. My name is Dejan Kosutic and I'm the main ISO 27001, NIS2 and DORA expert at Advisera. And Advisera is a company that makes compliance easy to understand and simple to use. This webinar today is streamed through Zoom, also through LinkedIn live events and YouTube live, and it will last approximately 50 to 60 minutes, and this really depends on the amount of questions that you will have. And basically the best way for you to actually get some benefit from this webinar is to ask questions. So feel free to ask questions through this question pane or through a chat window, and I'll try to answer your question even before the Q&A session at the end. So ask as many questions and then the webinar will be much more interesting. Good, so let me move on to the next slide. So why is this topic important? Why are internal audits important? Well, first of all, they're important because they're required by, I would say, most of these cybersecurity frameworks. I'll go in one of the first slides, explaining which exactly are requirements in NIS2, DORA, and 27001. But obviously, this is something that needs to be done. So what I'll explain in the webinar today is how to perform internal audit to satisfy these requirements, but not only just to comply, but also to have some benefits. And I'll explain these benefits as I go through the webinar. And this webinar today is intended, of course, for internal auditors, but also for security managers, because very often security managers are not really sure, how this needs to be done, and how to coordinate these efforts with the auditor and so on. So basically, this is something that is intended for auditors and managers. And I didn't mention here, but this is also for consultants. So if you are acting as a consultant, then this is something that will be also very interesting for you, because as you'll see, internal audits are very interesting as a service for consultants. Okay, very well. Now let me move on to the next slide. So I would say that the internal audit should be viewed not only, again, as only one compliance item. It should be also viewed as, in my view, as a key tool, as a key, let's say, method to find, all the problems in cybersecurity. You'll see actually later on as I go through the presentation why, but the point is, that the sole focus of internal audit is to find out if your company is really following everything that it should be following. And when you have this kind of a focused effort, then you are able to uncover, to find many things that you normally don't see, right? So you might not be seeing that, I don't know, your employees are not turning off their screens when they actually leave their workspace, these kind of things. So This is something that will be found during the internal audit. All right, so let me move on to the agenda. And by the way, as I go through these topics in the agenda, let me know which of these topics do you find the most interesting. And simply send me a message through this question pane, and this will actually give me an idea on which topics I should focus on the most during the presentation. So just let me know which of these you want me to spend most of the time today. Okay, so I'll go through this through these requirements of these three frameworks for internal audit. Then I'll show you a diagram on basically what kind of steps you have to do as part of this internal audit and which documents you have to produce. I'll go a little bit into how to develop this internal audit checklist as basically one document or a tool to help you out during internal audit. I'll also explain these techniques for finding evidence during the audit. I'll also explain you basically how the audit report needs to be created and what are part of the audit report. And how to address this lack of cooperation. So basically when you see that the senior management or other employees in the company are not really cooperating and they basically don't care about internal audit, what to do in these kind of cases. And finally, how to choose an internal auditor. Okay, good. So let me go to the first the first slide actually from the agenda, and this is what are the requirements in these frameworks. So first of all, ISO 27001 has this clause 9.2 and also controls 5.35 and 8.34. So let me switch the screen and show you how this looks in reality. What I'm showing you now on the screen is this big guide to 27001 clauses. And this is published on our Advisera website, and we'll actually send you now through the chat a link so that you can also open this article, or basically this text here. What it does is it actually gives you an overview of all the clauses and controls in 27001. So let's say that I'm interested in 9.2. Okay, so when I open it, what you will see here is this overview of a particular clause, which documents you need for each of these clauses, which are mandatory, which are not mandatory, basically, the suggestion on how to implement this, and also what kind of evidence is typically required. So since ISO 27001 is a standard and it's licensed, I cannot show you the text of the standard, but we can actually show you this kind of interpretation of the clauses of the standard, and this is what you are looking at. Now, just to explain you, if you join the webinar through Zoom or through YouTube, then you'll be able to click this link that you see now in your chat window and open this same page. If you join the webinar through LinkedIn, then because of some limitations in LinkedIn, you can't directly click this link. But the workaround here is for you to copy the URL and paste it into your browser, and you'll be able to open it and see it there. Anyway, so basically this is these are the requirements. So the requirements are basically that you have to actually perform these internal audits at planned intervals, and that you actually have to assess how effective your ISMS is, and if you are actually complying with not only with 27001 but also your internal policies and procedures. When we take a look at these other controls, let's say 5.35, by the way, you have also here all the list of all the controls, and 5.35 is independent review of information security. When you open it, you will see that this is what basically it requires. It requires that you have to perform this independent review of information security and so on and so forth. And basically this is also about internal audit. Okay, now let me switch now to my presentation and go for the NIS2. Now, out of these three frameworks, NIS2 is the only one that does not have a direct requirement for internal audit, but it does have indirect requirement. And let me actually show you now what I mean by this. So going back here, here you see the full text of NIS2 directive, and we'll send you also now the link to this text on Advisera website. So when we go for this Article 20, so let me open it here, governance. So Article 20, first paragraph. So basically, it says here that the management bodies of these companies that are in scope of NIS2 need to oversee the implementation of cybersecurity. So it doesn't mention specifically internal audit, but again, one of the best methods to oversee the implementation of cybersecurity is to perform internal audit. Okay, when we go further to Article 21, there's this article, there's this paragraph 4, which basically says that when a company finds that it does not comply with the measures, then it has to take these corrective measures. Again, internal audit is not mentioned, but usually most of the corrective actions are actually or non-conformities most of the non-conformities are uncovered during the internal audit. So indirectly, this is about internal audit. Now, as you probably know, if you are dealing with NIS2, is that local, EU countries within the European Union have to publish their own laws and regulations based on NIS2. And some of them are actually publishing this obligation of doing some kind of internal audit. They call it with different names. I'm not going to now go into this, but some of these, again, are specifying that you do need to perform internal audit, not because of NIS2, but because of this local law or regulation that is based on NIS2. Okay, going back to the slides, the DORA is the most specific when it comes to internal audits, and there are several articles here. So let me switch the screen and show you how this looks like. So again, we'll send you the a link to the full text. So let's go first for this Article 5, paragraph 2. Okay, paragraph 2, sorry, 2F, right? So let me go here. So approve and periodically review the financial entities' ICT internal audit plans, ICT audits, and material modifications to them. So these are the obligations for the management body, right, of the financial entity. Okay, and then we have Article 6, paragraphs 4, 6, and 7. So let's go here. So paragraph 4. Financial entities should ensure appropriate segregation of internal audit functions. So basically you need to have an independent internal auditor. Okay, then we have paragraph 6. So shall be subject to internal audit by internal auditors regular basis, financial audit plan. Auditors shall possess sufficient knowledge, skills, and expertise, and appropriate independence. Okay, and then we also have this paragraph 7. Based on the conclusions, financial entities shall establish a follow-up process, including the rules and timely verification and remediation. Okay, so basically this is what it requires. In the slide also you will have this, you will see this reference to this CDR. CDR is a kind of an appendix to DORA. But basically, it kind of reiterates what the DORA says around the internal audit, so it's nothing, let's say, new there. Okay, so as you can see, DORA specifically is the most detailed, a little bit less in 27001 and even less in NIS2, but there is, I would say, a clear requirement to do these internal audits. Now, if you noticed, there is no clear methodology in any of these documents on how to perform internal audit. And I would say this is, well, I wouldn't say this is unfortunate, because this gives you a freedom to actually do it in the best, let's say, in the way that you think the best, that would be the best. And what I'll actually show you is some best methods, or let's say best practices on how to perform internal audits according to these standards. Let me just go back and check something. Okay, so how to perform, what is the best practices for performing internal audits. However, since these frameworks do not define the method, then what I'm doing here, I'm showing you actually basically the methodology that is taken from ISO 19011. So this ISO 19011 is a standard which specifies auditing techniques. And this is basically the basic standard, not only for internal auditing, but also for certification audits and so on. Now, in today's webinar, I'm not going to deal with certification audits. This is, I would say, a different story. But again, these methods, these techniques are perfectly acceptable for internal audits as well. So let's see what basically you have to do here and so what are the steps, right? First, you have to plan the audit, and this is what is done in the document called Audit Program. Now, when you speak about ISO 27001, typically you have one year or 3-year cycle when you plan individual audits. So basically, Audit Program defines the sequence and the cycle of these individual internal audits. So let's say that you are a small company, let's say maybe 20 employees, then you will have, if you, let's say, go for a certification, let's say in August 2025, then you'll have internal audit maybe 1 month prior to this, so this would be July 2025, and then you would again have it in July 2026 because your surveillance audit will be in August 2026. So your initial certification is August 2025, surveillance audit August 2026, and then the next surveillance audit, audit 2027, and then recertification August 2028. 1 month prior to this, you are doing the internal audits. So in July 2025, July 2026, July 2027, July 2028. And the point is, you can actually, the planning of these audits is part of your audit program, where you define, okay, we will do these dates, we will do these audits at this sequence at these dates. This is the, let's say, audit criteria. This is the these are the auditors that need to be doing this and so on. So typically this is done on a 3-year cycle. You can also do it on a 1-year cycle. DORA doesn't specify the cycle, but it's best if you do this, let's say, on at least 1 year. You can do this also for a 3-year cycle. Now, larger organizations will have even a more, let's say, complex setting for internal audit program. They might say that, okay, since, I don't know, we have, let's say, 5,000 employees and, I don't know, 30 departments, then you can say, okay, in January, we'll do the internal audit of department number 1, in February, department 2, in March, department 3, and so on. And basically, then this becomes your internal audit program. All right, the second step is to prepare for an audit. This is where you define this audit agenda, where you basically define on a particular day who are you going to speak to, what are you going to review, this kind of thing. So this is let's say a very detailed plan on hourly basis on what you're going to do on a particular day, and this is where you also produce your internal audit checklist. I'll explain the internal audit checklist in the next slide. And then once you start performing the internal audit, then you actually have to record all of your findings. And I'll also show you this when I start explaining around internal audit checklist. And then once you perform, you complete your internal audit, then you have to report, write the internal audit report. I also have a separate slide for this. And you have to report these non-conformities, and I also explain you what is the logic of creating or raising these non-conformities. And finally, you have to do this follow-up, if you remember, specifically mentioned in DORA. So this is where the auditor has to verify if all the non-conformities were closed, right? So the auditor, let's say that you found during your July audit, let's say 3 non-conformities. Until, let's say, September or October, you have to verify that they have closed all the non-conformities there. All right, so now we'll share a couple of resources with you that you might find useful. So with regards to 19011, you'll find a free download on our website called How to Perform Internal Audit using 19011. So we'll send you now this link. Second thing is, if you're interested in finding out what are the differences between internal audit and external audit, or third-party audit. We'll send you a link to an article which explains these differences. And if you're specifically interested in ISO 27001, then we'll send you now this link to this YouTube of mine, a YouTube video that I recorded around internal auditing and how to go through all of these steps as part of ISO 27001 internal audit. All right, now let's move forward. Okay, I actually see a couple of questions, just to go through them quickly. So Simon is asking, can you please explain the differences between internal auditor and implementer? So internal auditor is someone who checks if you did everything right. The implementer, the person who is implementing any of these frameworks, is basically the person who is implementing, who is, let's say, writing policies and procedures and making sure that all of these documents, all of these processes are set up, right? So this is, I would say, the key difference, if I can do this in a couple of seconds. 𝗂𝗲𝗶𝘀𝗲 is asking, DORA is only for Europe? Yes, DORA and NIS2 are two cybersecurity frameworks that are relevant only for European Union. Alexei is asking, okay, I have a question of applicability of NIS2. It is mentioned in the directive to have a revenue more than and personnel numbering more than. So both conditions must be true in order to be regulated by the directive. Yeah, true. So, okay, today's webinar is not really about NIS2, but there is an article which explains directly the criteria on which companies need to be compliant with NIS2. So we'll send now you a link to this article which explains, which is basically called which companies need to comply with NIS2, and you will see the details on which criteria needs to be, which criteria you have to follow so that you know that you need to implement this. Simon is asking, to your knowledge, are local implementations for internal audits very prescriptive, if any? So as I mentioned, some are, if speaking about NIS2 laws in particular countries, some of them are pretty prescriptive, but not all. So European Union countries don't have a unique approach here. Okay, Mikhail is asking, can you help you with templates related to 37301? So we are not covering this standard, unfortunately. Joao is also asking, I usually do the internal audit 1 month before the review by the management meeting. Yeah, this is actually a very good point. So what I didn't mention is that internal audit always has to be done before the management review. So you do this internal audit, management review, resolve the corrective actions, and then you go for certification if you're going for 27001. So thank you for this intervention. Okay, right, now let's go for the internal audit checklist. So how do you actually create an internal audit checklist? So basically it's I would say rather easy, although it's not very fun, but it's rather easy to do it. First, you actually have to go through the whole framework and simply write down everything that every requirement that there is from a particular standard. So let me share the screen again, and yeah, let's see, since we are here, let's go for Article 5. So this is Article 5, and basically it says here, a management body of financial entities shall define, approve, or oversee the responsible for the implementation of all the arrangements, and so on and so forth. So let's say that this is one requirement, and then you actually have to write this down as a requirement in your internal audit checklist. You have to check if this is something that was being done as part of your implementation. All right, so this is, and again, why this is pretty boring job, because you have to go through the whole all the requirements from a particular standard or for a particular framework. Now, this is not going to be enough. What is also needed is that you actually go through all the internal audit documents. So let's say that a company has written, I don't know, access control policy. You actually have to go through your own access control policy and write down all of the specific requirements from this access control policy, and write it down just to make sure that you are checking also everything that is written there. So for example, let's say that you in your access control policy, it says that all the privileged accesses are approved only by one person, and that this is the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer. If this is something that you have written, then you also have to write this in your own internal audit checklist. Now, how do you normally structure this internal audit checklist? You typically write the reference, the requirements, and then this compliant and evidence. And let me actually show you in an example how this looks like. So this is an example of an internal audit checklist. Now it has these columns, right? Article, or in this case, this is the reference. Then it has this requirement as a second column. And then this has this compliance yes, no column. And then you have the evidence. Now, how do you normally use it? If you remember, 5.2c was, that clear roles and responsibilities are set for all ICT related functions. So let me just go back and see. So 5.2c. So 5.2c. Yeah. So this is the one, right? Set clear roles and responsibilities. And as you can see, it's directly written here. So basically, once you develop this internal audit checklist, and once you start doing the actual internal audit, then you have to record here if the company is really compliant, yes or no. And this is actually how you write down the results, yes or no. You simply put yes or no. And then you actually put here the evidence. This is how you describe how you actually establish that the company is compliant or not compliant, right? So basically, this is how you actually use this checklist. So you use this checklist first when you're planning your audit, right? And then you use this checklist also when you're executing your audit. So you're using this checklist for two purposes. And by the way, you can actually use this checklist from our DORA documentation toolkit. So if you're interested in DORA documentation, then you can see, we've sent you now the link to this DORA documentation toolkit. So what you can actually do, you can sign up for a free trial, and you'll be able to download a free demo of this document once you sign up for this free trial. You can download any document from DORA Toolkit, but also this internal audit checklist. And we'll also send you, we have these documentation toolkits also for NIS2 and for 27001. So we'll send you now the links to all of these toolkits. Again, for any of these, you can sign up for a free trial and download any of these documents. Okay, going back to my presentation. Yeah, okay, let's move on to the next slide. Now, how do you actually make sure that you are being objective? That and what is basically the method of determining if a company is compliant, yes or no? Because if you remember in this checklist, you have to say yes, compliant, or no, not compliant. Now, how do you actually do this in an objective way so that there can be no doubt whether you are doing the good job or not? Well, basically there is I would say an easy method to this. You actually have to compare audit evidence with audit criteria. Now, just to clarify these terms, audit evidence is basically any kind of evidence that you find during the audit. And in the next slide, you'll see three types of evidence that are acceptable. Now, audit criteria, this is basically what you have to be compliant with. Okay, so in case of let's say 27001, this is the ISO 27001 standard. I mean the text of the standard. And second, this is these are your internal audit. These are your internal policies and procedures for security. So any policy or procedure related to security is your audit criteria. Again, if you have access control policy, then your access control policy will be one of the criteria against which you actually do the audit. And then when you compare these two things, you actually get these audit findings. So just an example, let's say that your as I mentioned, access control policy, let's say that if you have this example that in the access control policy, you have defined that your CTO approves all the privileged access. Now, if you find the evidence that privileged access is actually approved not by CTO, but by, let's say, heads of the departments, okay, then this is the evidence that you found, let's say, a record or let's say email or something that shows that they are approving this, and compare it to audit criteria, meaning your access control policy, which says that this needs to be done by CTO. Since this is not aligning, this then is a non-conformity. So in this case, audit finding is a non-conformity because, again, the evidence shows that they are not complying with their own access control policy. So this is the way actually to do it in an objective way. You have hard requirements, you have hard evidence, you compare them. If they match, then the audit finding is that everything is fine. That then you write yes in this internal audit checklist, or you write no if the evidence shows something that is not clear in the requirement. And this is it. And this basically eliminates any kind of guesswork. All right, we'll share also with you now two more resources. One is how to create this non-conformity or non-conformance report. You'll see an article which explains a little bit more about this. And if you're actually interested in how 𝗂𝗶𝗀𝗶𝘀, this is our GRC small software for small GRC software for small companies. If you're interested how to resolve these non-conformities using 𝗂𝗶𝗀𝗶𝘀, then you can also read this article, this case study that we will also send you the link to. Okay, now let's go for how do you actually find audit evidence? Let me actually just see if the questions that are coming in. So 𝗍𝗲𝗴𝗶𝘀 is asking, is a 27000 audit to be applied to NIS2 and DORA audit? No. So basically, as I explained, each of these frameworks have their own requirements. So you're not using 27000 requirements for NIS2 or DORA. So it's not something that you would do. Tal is asking, how do we find an independent auditor from within the company? Actually, I'll cover this in one of the last slides, so please bear with me until towards the end of the presentation. I'll cover this there. 𝗍𝗲𝗴𝗶𝘀 is asking, can an ISO 27000 audit be applied to NIS2 and DORA? Okay, as I already... And also, are they audited separately? If so, how do you carry out the audits for DORA and NIS2? Again, I'm explaining now the method on how you do it. The question is if you can actually do it all together. So the answer is yes. Let's say that your company wants to comply with both NIS2 and DORA. You can actually, NIS2 and ISO 27001. You can actually do one internal audit where the auditor is then using as a requirement, as a criteria, NIS2, ISO 27001, and also your internal policies and procedures. So again, it's always the question of which kind of audit criteria your internal auditor has to take into account. And of course, you can use one framework or two, or I don't know, 3 if you want. Sergio is asking, is the checklist the same for ISO 27001? No, because obviously 27001 does not have the same requirements as DORA. Nicholas is asking, do we need evidence not to comply with the standard? Do we need evidence not comply with the standard? So I'm not sure, but I don't understand the question. Patrick is asking, for evidence samples, does a screenshot pass as evidence? Okay, I'll come to this and explain now in this screen now. I'll explain actually what is acceptable as evidence. Okay, so basically there are 3 types of evidence. One are documents and records, okay? And for example, let's say that you have this access control policy and that managers are approving access. Let's say that they are approving this through email, right? So basically someone sends an email request and then the manager says, okay, I agree or I disagree. So basically this kind of a written email is a record, which then is an audit evidence. It's perfectly acceptable as an audit evidence. So this is basically one, let's say, type of an evidence. Another type of a written evidence could be, let's say that you have, I don't know, a backup policy, you define a certain frequency of backup, and then the auditor wants to find out if the backup is done in the frequency that is defined according to this backup policy. In this case, the auditor asks the, let's say, system administrator to show the screen of the backup logs, right? And then if the backup policy says that you have to perform the backup every 6 hours, if the backup logs are saying that you're actually doing the backup every 6 hours, then the audit finding is that this particular activity is compliant with your internal backup policy. Okay, so basically this is when you take documents and records as evidence of a particular activity. Now, to answer the question, if you need to take a screenshot, if we are speaking about ISO 27001, then you do not have to take screenshots. You have just it's enough actually that in your internal audit checklist you specify, okay, I was reading emails from this and that person from that and that date approving the access to these persons, right? Or I have seen the backup logs from that and that system on that particular date, and I've seen this and this. So basically this kind of evidence, again, you don't need to write or take a screenshot. Now, what is needed for, I don't know, a particular European legislation, or let's say for a particular EU country NIS2 law, this might differ. So in some cases related to DORA or some cases related to NIS2, they might require also taking screenshots. But again, if we are speaking about 27001, this is not needed. Now, the problem with this collecting records and documents is that you don't always have records for everything, right? And this is where actually a second type of evidence comes into play. And this is personal observations of an auditor, right? For example, if you have, if the company has installed CCTV cameras around the office, then actually, well, the only way for an auditor to check out if this is really there is to simply walk around the offices and see if these cameras are installed, okay? So this is, let's say, a case where, it's hard to expect to have some kind of records of these kind of, let's say, the positions of these cameras. Of course, you would have records of their recordings, but you wouldn't know basically where their positions are until, unless this company has a very detailed security plan for physical security, maybe then they would have the positions of the cameras written down. But in most cases for smaller companies, this kind of plan is not documented. So personal observation is the only way to actually check this out. Now, in some cases, also this personal observation is not going to be enough. So you actually have to do these interviews, okay? This is basically when an auditor speaks to employees and then, asks them how the things are being done. So, for example, you might have, I don't know, a process where the senior auditor needs to check the code. The senior developer needs to check if the code is let's say, secure. And basically, so that the junior developer are writing the developers are writing the code and then sending this code for review for a senior developer. Now, again, it's hard to find written evidence sometimes. So what you actually, as an auditor, have to do, you have to speak or interview these junior and senior developers and basically ask them, okay, how do you make sure? What is the process of checking this code that is secure? And then they actually explain you, how this is done, who sends things to whom, and so on. So the point being here is that you can't rely only on one type of evidence. So interviews are not going to be enough without these personal observations and documents and records. But also, documents and records are not going to be enough without personal observations and interviews. So the point being here is that you actually have to perform all three types of that you have to actually find evidence through all these three ways to actually get a complete picture. And from my experience, I can tell you that actually interviewing people is by far the best way actually to find out what is really happening. It's because when you start asking these questions, on how the things are done, then you actually get a much more complete picture than simply viewing the records. So it's very important that you actually go for all of these three types of finding evidence. Okay, if you want to learn more about these three types of finding evidence, you can actually take a look at this article. It's called ISO 27001 Internal Audit, the complete guide. So there you will see a little bit more information. And there is also this, if you're interested in about this audit evidence, you can also take a look at this YouTube video of mine. It's called Preparing for ISO 27000 Certification, Audit Evidence with Conformio. So again, if you're interested in seeing how Conformio software actually handles this evidence, then you can take a look at this video. All right, a couple of more questions. Simon is asking, how does data sampling work during an audit? Are there any indications or best practices? Yeah, so depends really on the size of the organization. If there is, let's say, a small organization and there are in total of, let's say, 10 emails describing, or approving the access according to access control policy, well, then you'll check all the 10. It's not hard to find and read all of these 10. But if this is a large company and there is, let's say, 1,000 emails being sent as approval of the access, then you're not going to check all 1,000. Then you'll actually check maybe, I don't know, 5% or 10% of these, where you might, if you're doing this so-called sampling, then you'll focus on the records where actually where the biggest risks are, right? Then you might actually focus only on those records which approve the access to the most sensitive systems. How will you know which what are the most sensitive systems? You actually take into risk register. You know then what are the most sensitive ones, and then you actually check only the records of approval for those systems. And this is basically how you sample the records. Of course, the bigger the risks are, the bigger the sample is. But again, if really the number of records is huge, then you won't be able to check everything. Joao is asking, objectivity versus subjectivity is a very good question. In 27002, some controls have several topics. I'm not always sure if the organization has to comply with all. The answer is definitely not. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but 27002 is not a mandatory standard. It's only a guidance. So if a company wants to use 27002 as a guidance for implementation of 27001, fine, but there is no requirement that you actually use 27002 as opposed to 27001, which is mandatory. Everything that is written in 27001 is mandatory, and this is the key difference between 27001 and 27002. Charbas is asking, do you have any vacancy for entry level in the IT audit? We are not hiring, I'm sorry. Simon, do you have guidelines for baselining the interviews? Yeah, what I'll show you actually, a couple of our courses, online courses, where you will be, where you will actually see a more detailed guideline on how to perform all these interviews. Okay, anyway, let me move forward. So when you write the audit report, there are a couple of elements that you have to write there. So first of all, you need to have this introduction where you define, the let's say basic setting of the internal audit. So like purpose, scope, criteria, dates when this internal audit was done, sites where this was physical sites where this was made, who were the auditors, who were the auditees, these kind of things. Then the second element, this is not mandatory, but it might be done, the audit path. So basically, what was the sequence of things that you were checking? So you were checking, I don't know, first department number 1, then department number 4, then you came back to department number 1, and then move on to department number 3. So if you want, you can actually write this kind of an audit path. For 27001, this is not mandatory. From what I know, for DORA, it's also not mandatory, but it might become mandatory if for some of these, in some of these specific regulations. Now, the most important part are these audit conclusions. And this is basically where you specify these non-conformities, right? So if you find that, for example, they're not, that the company that the access is approved, privileged access is approved by the heads of the departments, whereas it should have been done by the CTO, then this is a non-conformity, and then you have to write it down as part of your internal audit report. But you would also write these opportunities for improvement, right? So these are not non-conformities, but this is something that you as an internal auditor can actually suggest as an improvement. Let's say that, I don't know, the company has this practice that everyone who leaves their workplace has to manually shut off their screen. But you can actually say, okay, fine, this works. I checked it out. It works in practice, but it will be more convenient if you simply set that the screen is automatically shut off after 2 minutes. And then you can say, look, this is not non-conformity. This is only my suggestion on how you can do things better, and this would be opportunity for improvement. And you can also have observations, right? Observation is, very often an example of something positive that the company is doing. Like, okay, company has, installed an excellent CCTV system that covers all the, let's say, the secure areas from all possible angles. This way you actually basically say that this is a good thing that they've done, and so that they also have a feeling. I mean, the company has also a feeling in which things they were actually doing a very, very good job. So anyway, all of these things are typically a part of the internal audit report. Okay, let me see if some other questions are coming in. So question from Rina: do you have any recommendation on how to deal with NIS2 assessments when we have one legal entity have multiple operational entities, for example, 20 to 30 operational entities? So this really depends on the, so I assume that you are asking about several companies being the part of the same group. Now, typically, if this is a large, let's say, organization with lots of these subsidiaries, then in your audit program, you can simply say that, you will audit your entity number 1, let's say January, entity number 2, February, and so on. This is one way to do it. You might even merge the audit of several entities together if they're, let's say, in the same location, or if they're, let's say, related to the same process, or something like this. All right, let me move on. Now, how do you address this problem of lack of cooperation, and what are basically the challenges here? So one challenge is to choose a good internal auditor, because very often companies don't want to basically, well, select any auditor or not to pay some good auditor. Very often the auditees, so the people that you need to audit, are not available. Very often these auditees are afraid of showing any mistakes, and they speak off the record, right? They don't want to state anything officially. Very often lack of senior management is very often does not want to get involved. So all of these are realistically challenges when doing an internal audit. Now the solution, you're going to be a little bit I would say disappointed when I present you this solution, but the solution is not quick, and basically the solution here is to introduce this no blame culture, where basically even if you find something that is bad, even if you find these non-conformities, it's not going to be an end of the world for the person who is responsible. Rather, you should treat these problems in your company as opportunity for improvement, right? Whenever something is not working right, you basically use this as basically as an example, and then figure out how to eliminate the root cause and how to prevent this problem from happening again. And this continual improvement is one of the main concepts in these ISO standards, including ISO 27001. Now, how do you actually come to this no blame culture? The answer again is not easy, it's not simple, it's not quick, but basically I would say the best trigger for this is that you show a clear benefit for the senior management. If they understand, I would say, if they understand the benefit of internal audit, then they will also understand why this no blame culture is also important for performing this internal audit. And this is where we actually come to the main point of how internal audit can be useful. it will be useful, okay, because on one hand you will comply with the requirements of DORA and 27001. But much more importantly, actually performing an internal audit gives a very good, I would say, evidence-based approach for the senior management to know exactly what is happening and where the problems are. And if you remember in NIS2, when I was showing you the text of NIS2, basically NIS2 specifically says that the senior management is responsible for cybersecurity. Now, how can they be responsible for cybersecurity if they do not understand what is happening? Okay? And this is my point. Internal audit can be used as a key tool for senior management to understand what is happening. And if you present it in this way, then they will start appreciating, because they say, aha, if I do this right, I mean, if the internal audit is done right, I will have all the information. If something bad is happening, this is actually how I get, I as a senior manager get resolved, because I understand and I found where the problem is, and then I fixed it, right? So no one can actually, from the legal point of view, no one can say that I as a senior management didn't do actually my job. So if the senior management understands this very positive, very important role of internal audit, then you can actually try to agree with the senior management that this no blame culture is very, I would say, crucial for internal audit to work. So again, not an easy solution, but I would say, you know, this is the real thing. You know, it's really the way to do it. Okay, yeah, let's move on to the next slide, and this is how to choose an internal auditor. So basically, first of all, the internal auditor needs to have competencies. So first of all, the internal auditor needs to understand the framework. So let's say 27001 internal auditor needs to know what 27001 is about, you know, the details of the standard and also the details of the auditing techniques. So in this very short time, I was explaining some of these auditing techniques. Of course, it's not enough if you want to become a real internal auditor. Also, this internal auditor needs to have some prior experience, right? So it's best if this internal auditor has already experience in of course, IT. Even though it's not necessary that this person is an IT expert. Okay. So from my experience, it is enough that the internal auditor has, I would say, at least average experience of internal audit. But I would say that also this business experience is equally as important. Because if you have an internal auditor who is an expert in IT, but has no idea about business processes, this person is going to have huge problems with doing the internal audit. Because internal audit, again, is not only an IT, it's not only a technical thing. Because very often you need to understand the process which is being done. And again, if you have someone who understands business processes but has no idea what IT is, again, not a good candidate. Basically, the best candidate would be someone who has a good balance between this IT, let's say, experience and business experience. What is also important is this independence, right? So that you have someone who is not in a conflict of interest. So for example, let's say CISO or Chief Information Security Officer cannot be the internal auditor, because obviously then this person would need to audit his own work, which wouldn't, this would be a conflict of interest. Or if you have, I don't know, ISO 27001 project manager, this person also cannot be internal auditor. So you need to find someone in your company who is independent. Now, what are the options to find this kind of a person? You can actually have this person in-house. So let's say that you are, I don't know, company of, let's say, 20 employees or 30 employees, and let's say that you are in a SaaS business and you want to get ISO 27000 certified. You might find, let's say, someone maybe from the marketing, or maybe from, I don't know, human resources department, or someone from, I don't know, legal department. And then this person can actually do the internal audit, because it's usually this person is not directly involved in most of these security processes. Or you might simply hire someone from the outside, and typically this is you can actually hire a consultant to do this, and there are actually more and more consultants who are focusing on internal audits as their service that they're providing to their clients. So this is certainly something that you can do. Okay, we'll also send you now the link to this article called Qualifications for ISO 27001 Internal Auditor. So if you want to read about this for 27001, you can take a look. Now, what I wanted to show you is if you want to train your own internal person to become an internal auditor, then typically you would send this person for internal auditor course. Now let me share the screen and show you how this looks like. So what we have on Advisera, we have these internal auditor courses, and basically they are free if you want to go through the course itself, right? So you can sign up and go through all the videos for free, and we charge only if you go for the exam and if you want to get the certificate, right? But if you don't need a certificate, then you can go through the whole course for free. Anyway, I'm showing. Let me show you how this curriculum looks like for 27001. Basically, the course has 10 modules, but the first 6 modules are explaining about the standard. If you remember, the internal auditor needs to know about the standard and also about the internal auditor auditing techniques. So the first 6 are about the standard, and then modules 7 to 10 are about doing the techniques for doing the internal audit. So for example, I don't know, risk management, right? You see here what lessons are included. So addressing risks and opportunities, risk management process, risk identification, blah, blah, blah. So basically this is, these are the lessons, and all of these lessons are in the form of videos. Videos are usually about 3, 4, 5 minutes. And basically as you watch these videos, you go through the course. Now, when you speak about auditing, let's say here, internal audit, main audit. So techniques for finding evidence, sampling the records, recording the evidence, interviewing techniques, remote audits, auditing integrated management systems, and so on. So this is basically, so everything that I explained here in this short webinar, you'll have a much more detailed in the course. Okay, let's see the DORA internal auditor course. Same thing, so it's free to sign up to go through all the videos. We charge only for the exam. Curriculum, same thing. The first 6 modules are explaining the details of DORA. So let's say cybersecurity measures. Here you see all the lessons here. So let's say capacity and performance management. So it covers this DORA Article 7 and 9, and also this CDR, and so on and so forth. So it's pretty detailed, and actually module 6 and to 10 are the same as in 27001 internal auditor course, because again, auditing techniques are the same for any of these standards. Okay, we'll send you now this links to these courses, so if you want to sign up, you can use these links. Okay, good. Now let me go back to this to the presentation. So we're a little bit out of time, so I'll jump here to the conclusion, and then I'll go through your remaining questions. So I would say that I don't think really that internal audit should be viewed as only another compliance steps, and I view this internal audit as a tool for the company, not only for the company, primarily for the senior management to get things right. Yeah. And because if internal audit is not done properly, then the company is going to miss lots of things that are going wrong. So it's a very useful tool for the senior management. And of course, for that purpose, you can use internal auditor courses from Advisera to become an internal auditor. And we'll also send you now the link to schedule a call with our training expert. And if you want, he can actually show you how this examination works. So if you want, you can schedule a call with our expert. Okay, good. Now let's move on to the Q&A session. So there are some questions that are left unanswered, so I'll go through these questions. If you have any other questions, please send them in. And before I start answering your questions, there's just a couple of notes. So first of all, feel free to reach out directly to me through email. and we'll send you my email address now. You'll see it in a second. Second, you can follow me on LinkedIn and YouTube, and on my LinkedIn profile you'll see my posts regarding latest tips and let's say updates from this cybersecurity and compliance world. So if you want to keep in touch and keep up to date, then follow me on LinkedIn. And as I mentioned on YouTube, I'm publishing lots of videos, how-to videos, and if you prefer this video format for learning, then you can take a look at my YouTube profile. I also have this Secure and Simple podcast, and this podcast is intended primarily for consultants, and this is where I interview successful consultants, and so that you can learn actually how to become a successful consultant yourself. And you'll see one interview there with 𝗵𝗲𝗶𝘀𝗁. He's also a consultant, but he is also doing a lot of this auditing for his clients. So if you want to learn a little bit about his success story, then take a look at this Secure and Simple podcast. And you'll see all these links now in the chat window. Okay, third thing I wanted to announce is that my next webinar will be CISO's role in ISMS according to ISO 27001, and I'll explain actually what are all the activities that companies need to do continuously, not only internal audits, but management reviews and lots of other things that need to be done actually to maintain an ISMS. So if you're interested in this, take a look at my webinar, next webinar. And you'll see the links also in the chat window for signing up. Okay, good. So let me go through a couple of questions that I didn't answer yet. So Cam is asking, can risk management be a benefit to the audit checklist? Well, I mean, yes. First of all, you have to in your internal audit checklist, you have to include all the requirements regarding risk management, and you have to check out if the company has actually performed everything that was needed according to risk management. This is one thing. Second, once the company did the risk management, you actually have to take into account these risks when performing the audit. So I mentioned already an example for sampling the records, but you can also, let's say that the company has 10 departments. If you know that 2 or 3 departments are where most of the risks are, then you will naturally spend more time in these 2 or 3 departments, and you will spend less time in other departments. So you will be informed, I would say, through this risk management on how to actually, where to concentrate during your audit. Manolita is asking, should the requirement and guidance complement each other? Should the requirement and guidance complement each other so that the implementation is more optimized? Okay, this is not a question about auditing, but yes, if you read only 27001, it's going to be very hard for you to implement it. So you can take, of course, guidance from 27002, or by hiring a consultant, or by using some tools from Advisera. So it's up to you, but yes, guidance is always very good if you want to comply with the standard. Simon is asking, aren't non-conformities found upon and consequently causal for getting fined? If you find, so let's say that you need to be compliant with DORA. If you find non-conformities and if you fix them, then no fines will be charged. But if actually if supervisory, so if a government body that supervises a financial entity finds these non-conformities that you did not fix, then you will certainly get fined. So the idea is that actually you do it yourself, that you find the problems yourself and fix them, because if they find something that is not fixed, then you'll get fined. Same thing with the ISO 27001. Let's say that you did an internal audit. Internal audit found no non-conformities, and you went for a certification audit, and the certification auditor found, I don't know, 20 non-conformities. Then you will certainly get, well, not fined, but you will not get certified, because it's especially if you got major non-conformities. But if the certification auditor has seen that the internal auditor has found, let's say, 15 or 20 non-conformities, that all of these non-conformities were fixed, closed, then the certification auditor will say, look, first of all, you have a great internal auditor. Second, your internal system is working greatly because you managed to resolve all these non-conformities, and yes, you will get certified. So this is the way how these how certification auditors are working. Patrick is asking, in your experience, can you use an auditee speaking off record as an evidence? Typically you wouldn't do it, but I mean you don't have to actually quote a person saying something. It's enough that you say, look, I found this in system XYZ. Because when a person says that something is not working, you actually go and see in the system itself if there is any, let's say, written record or lack of written record there. So then you can basically specify this written record as something that is let's say, missing from the whole story. If you have an ISO lead auditor certification, can you lead audits for DORA and NIS2? No. So first of all, just to clarify, lead audit. So it's important to understand that there is a distinction in ISO world between certification audits and internal audits. So to perform an internal audit, you can have, let's say for 27001, you can have ISO 27001 internal auditor course or ISO 27001 lead auditor course. Both of them are fine for doing the internal audit. But if you go for, if you have to be compliant with DORA, first of all, 27001 is not a relevant standard for DORA. So you need to have the DORA internal auditor course if you want to perform internal audit. So this is what is important to understand there. All right, I think I answered, if not all, then most of your questions. So let me wrap up the webinar. Just a few words before we finish. So as I mentioned, this 1 hour webinar was really too short to go into details of auditing, and for that purpose, please do check out these courses. Again, you can sign up for free, you can go through all the lessons for free. And in about 10 minutes, we'll publish the PDF presentation deck from today's webinar, and you'll actually be able to find it on the same page where you're watching the webinar now. So just leave this page open and check it again in a couple of minutes, and then you will see we'll publish these links towards this PDF presentation in the comments, right? And also we'll publish all the links that we shared today. If you didn't manage to write them down or if you didn't manage to copy them, we will also publish all of these links in these comments so that you will be able to open them again. So this is if you joined through LinkedIn or YouTube, you will find these links in the comments. If you joined the webinar through Zoom, then we will send you an email with all of these links in the next couple of hours, but latest by tomorrow morning. So simply check out this email and you will see all of these links. And finally, you'll also see this short survey. So it's really short, only 3 questions, and I would really appreciate if you give me a feedback on how am I doing in this webinar. And this would be all. Thank you very much for your participation, and I hope you have enjoyed this webinar. Have a nice day.